What a season of surprises. The Saints are on top and the Cats are sitting last. But guess what? Jason Dunstall is still angry, so some things never change. Hello and welcome to Fox Sports Lab AFL. I'm Ben Dixon, your host. Joining me, AFL great Jason Dunstall and the stats guru, Paton. Welcome, boys.
How you doing?
Oh, okay, a bit frosty off the top, but guess what? It's Dunstall don't argue time. So, Chief, you got a little bit to get off your chest.
Don't like the word angry. I don't get angry. I get frustrated is what I get. I want to know, when did we become blindly obsessed with picking talls? And I'm talking about tall forwards, essentially. Yes, it works if they're guns. We saw Franklin and Roughhead at Hawthorn. We saw Cameron and Hawkins at Geelong last year. We've seen Lynch and Revolt win them. We've seen Kennedy and Darling win at West Coast. But they're gun players. Don't just play talls for the sake of playing talls. All it does is compromise what you're trying to achieve. First thing it does, if they're not guns and they're not dominating, it kills your forward 50 pressure. I mean, seriously, the ball just starts rebounding willy-nilly out of your forward 50 and that puts the defence under pressure. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We saw, I get we need to get games into young players, right? I get that. Young key position players take games before they can improve. But we saw the Tigers last week in greasy, slightly wet conditions playing extra young, tall, up forward. Didn't work. All of a sudden they make the sub in the second half. Now Cumberland comes on and nearly turns the game around. Now, they didn't win, but gee, he got them back into the game, didn't he? It was extraordinary. We've seen the Bulldogs. All that great talk about playing 3 or 4 talls. How did that go? No good whatsoever. The Swans are now dealing with how do you play Franklin, Amati, McDonald all together? Well, you probably don't, because the 3 of them aren't going to dominate. What about last week down in Tassie, Dicko? We saw Hawthorn go small in the forward line. What happened? Oh, my goodness, they won a game.
Unbelievable.
They won a game because you don't have to play talls. It's horses for courses. So please, let's try and get some things right, will we? I'm getting really annoyed by just... And don't get me started on contracts. Now, that's not the players' fault, but clubs are making stupid decisions around tall forwards and it's skewing the market badly.
Are you making a reference to Eric Hippel's 7-year deal?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying there is so much to put into this basket. It's frightening and I'm getting a little frustrated.
Well, you didn't mention Joe the Goose up in Brisbane with Eric Hippel, but we'll go there later on. Al, what's your thoughts on that?
Just when Jace was saying, ranting there, the thing that just jumped straight to my mind was at the MCG last Saturday night, watching the Bombers. They played Jake Stringer and Sam Wiedemann up forward. Obviously, Peter Wright's out. Sam Landsberger had a great stat in the Herald Sun this week that they were targeted 11 times, those two, for a 0% return. The Saints just whisked the ball out every single time, and they had little Butler and Higgins kicking goals at the other end. So it shows it can work.
What about Richmond? 15th for scoring. Like, what's happened to the Tigers in terms of their firepower?
Well, Richmond and Brisbane were the top 2 teams for scores last year, and they're both in the bottom 6 this year. So there's issues at both teams, and it's interesting that both of them have brought in midfielders to bolster the midfield and fix what they thought was maybe an issue there. Richmond, their clearance game has improved and their defence is still good, but yeah, there's something really badly falling down in that piece where they get it, turn those into scores. And Cumberland, I think, is going to be a really interesting case this week if they play him again, because at least he looked like he could make something happen up there. But I mean, one thing that you can tell from Richmond games this year is the overall score in those games has been really, really low.
Well, Dimmer's fault.
It's Dimmer's fault.
It's Dimmer's fault. Now, we all love Dimmer. Let's be brutally honest. We love him, and he gives us such great clips when he does presses and the like, and he cracks jokes, and he's warm, and he's hearty. What are you doing, Dimmer? Seriously, he's gone from one of the most attacking teams to now playing defence. You've got Lynch and Revolt up forward. You've got Bolton and Martin. What? Can't see any weapons up forward, Dimmer? Coach some attack, son. Get back to what you do best.
See, I knew it'd take a while to heat up, but there's a crank in his back.
Frustration.
There is frustration here. I just want to touch on quickly, Essendon, St Kilda in particular, didn't have a forward line. You mentioned the Hawks last week. First 2 rounds, didn't have a forward line, and they kicked 100 points in winning scores, Al. So are we going away, to Chief's point, are we going away from the talls now? Are we going for that more dynamic smalls?
Well, I just think it's, as you say, horses for courses, and it might be different case from week to week depending on your opposition and venues and things like that, but you just work with the talent that you've got. So if you've got the big talls who are absolute guns, you back them in, but if you don't, then you find another method. Although maybe Tom Hawkins, there's a question there about should he be playing at the moment.
Thank you for the voice of reason. So you started skewing it straight the other way because you just don't understand. Al's understanding if you've got good tools, they play. But if they're not playing well, you don't have to play them for the sake of it, Dicko.
Well, I wasted 8 years of my career as a decoy trying to get out of the way for these tools.
But you're not a tall, we didn't know what you were.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was either. All right, there you have it, coaches. Don't go tall or you're going to hear from the
that's not what I said.
frustrated Chief. The Kangaroos are on notice. If you want ownership of the Good Friday slot at Marvel, well, give us a worthy showing. Last week we went with North against our hearts, Jason, in Tasmania, and they let us down. Can Clarko turn it around this week against the Blues?
No, he cannot. No, look, we're hoping for a great game, but the more you look at this, the tougher it's going to be for North without basically any key defenders. Now, and I know we were just talking about tools, but Carlton have got a couple of really good ones up forward. The funny thing about the Blues is they don't score as heavily as perhaps they should. Maybe that's the quality of the smalls, but maybe they're not getting enough goals out of their midfield. But it's hard to see North out holding Curnow and Mackay.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Carlton, where they've improved this year has been their defence.
Yep.
So they've been winning even though their forwards haven't really been firing and keeping oppositions to low scores. And Mackay's the interesting one because looking at all the stats, it's sort of hard to see why it's not quite working for him. He's getting as many opportunities, but he's just not cashing in. But you'd think this might be the day it happens. He kicked 4 against North last year and 2 goals in each of his last 6 Marvel Stadium appearances.
And Dicko, you would think that Davies, Uniacke and Simpkin coming back in has to give North a chance at least.
It'll give them a massive chance. But the pleasing thing for North is they've kept the opposition to 78 points. So of that quadrangle, the premiership quadrangle, they're in the go zone for their defence. But as Jason said, Al, they've got their work cut out with Curnow and Mackay.
Well, the weirdest Mackay stat is that you've got Ben Mackay and his brother, and they've never played in the same game against each other. So there's a bit of a conspiracy out there. Is there really 2 of them or just the one?
What about LDU? So Calf laid out last week. You've just said that's a massive in.
Surely plays.
In that midfield, can they match motors with Carlton, Al?
Yeah, well, I mean, him and Simpkin both come in, so that's a huge bonus for them. So, I mean, there was a little bit of talk about Sam Walsh maybe pushing, but I don't think he'll play this week. So, yeah, that'll be a really interesting battle. And, I mean, North, actually, their record against Carlton at Marble is pretty good. 5-1 out of the last... They've won 5 of the last 6 games there against the Blues, but hard to see them doing it this week.
All right, well, it's interesting. We're all going with Carlton, so that's pretty boring for everybody. But hopefully we get a cracking Friday clash. We might be in for a dour slog between the Tigers and the Doggies going on last week's results. But Al, can the Tigers kick a winning score? And guess what? Big plus, Dusty Martin is back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he fits into that forward line because that hasn't quite worked for them this year. But you'd think on paper, surely, him, Rewalt, Tom Lynch, they've kicked 1,500 career goals between them. So surely it clicks at some stage. A good omen for the Tigers. The last 3 times they've started 1-1-1 with a draw, a win and a loss in the first 3 rounds. They've made the grand final. So something for Tiger fans.
That's a big stat. It's funny, I was really, really bullish about the Tigers heading into the season. A little less bullish now because they're not just playing that free-flowing brand of footy. You know, when they turn it over and just go and run in numbers and score heavily. That's really struggling for them. So I've actually tipped an upset in this game, Digger. And we are seeing upsets from week to week. So I just think the Bullies, with a win under their belt, might be able to get a little bit of momentum, but no great confidence.
No great confidence. I hope Dimmer flicks that switch back to what they like. All right, Chief, let's go to Port Adelaide and the Swannies now. Port are struggling. We love when they struggle because I'm not a massive Port fan. But let's look at the stats. The past 6 games against the Swannies are with Port.
Yeah, and that threw me when I saw that. That's probably the only thing that stopped me from declaring Sydney as the greatest morals you've ever seen on form. At the SCG, I think they played particularly well. They had a downer last week. They'll bounce back. Any team under Horse, they don't tend to lose back-to-back too often. And Port, I just can't get a handle on now, although what we have seen are teams with their backs to the wall find a performance this year.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, Port was great in round 1. It just seems an eternity ago now the way the competition moves on. But I mean, one stat that they give them a tick for is they've conceded the fewest disposals and fewest marks to the opposition of any team. So Swans midfielders might have it a little bit tougher, but Sydney's won its last 9 at the SCG. So
there we go.
I think
that's the stat that matters.
That was the stat that got me over the line. 9 at the SCG, but we're all tipping the Swannies, and the Chief is going it alone with the Doggies.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.
Let's look at a couple of fascinating matches. Firstly, the Bombers versus the Giants, and then the battle of the cellar dwellers, the Cats and the Hawks. Al, I'm going to start with you. The Bombers, can they rediscover their winning touch against the Giants at Marvel on Sunday?
The Giants have actually won their past 4 against Essendon, but I think, the Giants are struggling a bit this year. Coming down to Melbourne, I reckon the Bombers can get back on the winners list. One thing, I think it'll be a bit of a midfield shootout. Josh Kelly, Darcy Parish, these guys have been putting up huge numbers, and they both have great records at Marvel, so I think there'll be plenty of ball to go around in there, but yeah, I like the Bombers here.
Can't say I've got a great deal of confidence in either team. Picked the Bombers because of the home ground advantage, but a little bit worried about the fact that the Giants traditionally match up okay. And what I will say is recent games, most of them have been pretty close. Yep. So I wouldn't be thinking there's going to be a blowout either way here.
Have you seen an improvement with Adam Kingsley just quickly on the Giants?
Well, I think it's going to take a while to work out exactly how he wants them to play, but he's trying to get a bit of run and gun going back when they win the ball out of defence.
All right, Bung, how the mighty have fallen. Can the Hawks deliver the Cats a 0-4 start to the year?
If only they could, Dicko.
There's a lot of hope in that for you.
Look, it's interesting. They are just a shadow of their former selves, the Cats, at the moment. And we've spoken about some of the problems, and they're not things that you fix very, very quickly. You know, when you're looking at the fitness of a Tom Hawkins and his lack of mobility and those sorts of things, and the impotence of the midfield is really hamstringing them. They've got problems down back. So they've got problems everywhere. Trouble is, they're coming up against a team that's, rebuilding and only just going, who are coming off a win, albeit against North. So it'd be so good to see the Cats start 0-4, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Al?
Well, I mean, they don't want to lose this one. Of the past 34 teams to go 0-4, only one has gone on to make the finals. So how big would that be if the Hawks could knock them off? But yeah, I think you'd think surely the Cats get it together. And I just think we'll mention that James Sicily's number 1 in the comp for marks. I think he took 18 last week.
Yep.
So he'll take a huge number again this week, but I think probably the Cats get the win.
All right, that's the 3 of us with the Bombers and 3 of us tipping the Cats. That's pretty boring when you think about it, but they're going to chalk up their first win for the season. Speaking of mighty and fallen, I need to fire up with the tipping department.
Yes, you do.
Easter's about where I come good because this is exactly where I thought I'd be with the tipping, just to make them think you're weak when you're strong. All right, let's start with the Saturday clash between the Crows and the Dockers at Adelaide Oval. I've got the Crows on top. How does it sound for you guys?
Yeah, I'm going with the Crows as well. They've been in a position to win all 3 games. It's been inaccuracy in front of goal, not taking their opportunities, and they're a little inconsistent in one of the games where they played one big quarter and a couple of ordinary quarters. But the funny thing about the Dockies, Al, is they win a heap of the ball. The ball ain't going anywhere. So they're not moving it, they're not doing anything with it, and that's really killing their ability to hit the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a fascinating watch this weekend because Adelaide, as you say, have looked really exciting at times, but they've conceded 300 points in their 3 games, so clearly they need to tighten that up. But then the Dockers haven't been able to score, so who's going to come out on top in that battle? But yeah, I think the Crows at home.
All right, Ross the boss. Well, the Saints, will they go 4-0 against the Suns at Marvel on Saturday night? Are you tipping Ross to just keep it rolling for the Saints here and remain on top of the ladder?
Well, I'm tipping St Kilda. I'm not thinking they're going to go all the way through to September and still be one of the teams that we're talking about. And the Suns were so good last week, weren't they? But that was back up at home at what's it called now? Heritage Bank Stadium, I think it's called, knocking the Cats off. Can they come down here and do it at Marvel? I don't know. I think Ross has got a good, confident group playing at the moment and just banking some wins, and the draws help them as well.
Have you got any gold around the stats now? Because everyone's talking finals footy for St Kilda, albeit we're up to round 4. Al, have you got any?
Yeah, I can give you something for Saints fans. They won their first 3 games. They've only done it 5 times in the last 60 years or so, but every single time they've made the grand final or the prelim.
Wow, hear that?
Including their 1 premiership.
They're going to buck the trend this year. They
they
won't
really?
make the prelim or the grand final. That's my call.
In 66?
Yeah, they did it in 66.
Bang, Barry Breen. All right, the Demons are the short price favourite of the weekend. They'd have to go to the wrong ground to lose to the Eagles in Perth, wouldn't you think, Chief?
Well, it's almost a second string Eagles team. They just got decimated last week, and Melbourne put that little aberration up at the Gabba away. They were terrific again last week. They look like they're the team we think they're going to be in 2023. So it's very hard to make a case for the Eagles. It's hard to make a case, actually, Al, for a competitive game.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think the Eagles went okay last week.
Yeah, they tried really hard.
But yeah, the injuries just made it almost impossible. And one player I'll be watching closely this week is Brodie Grundy. We saw with Max Gawn out back in the ruck, he really dominated against the Swans last week, and he comes up against an Eagles team that is playing second and third stringers in the ruck. So I think he'll run around and get an absolute stack of it.
Are you expecting West Coast to respond after the Derby at all? Like, we saw some
How can
improvement.
you respond with no manpower?
No, but in terms of game plan, like, you can go away and then be defensive because you don't have personnel, but are you expecting Simo to stick to what he knows in terms of what the tweaks he's made?
I don't think he's got too many options in terms of what he can do. He was proud of their performance last week. The effort was brilliant from some of the players, but you know, Oliver and Petrarca in particular might just go crazy this weekend.
Yeah, and the other one who's coming in for the D's is Keziah Pickett, who obviously missed a couple of weeks with suspension. Maybe with 2 weeks, he might be, consider himself a little bit lucky to get back this week, but good week to come in. He was so good in round one, playing through the midfield and up forward. He's kicked at least one goal in his last 13 games, so you'd pencil him in for at least 1 or 2 this week.
Licking his chops.
All right, there you have it. Our round 4 tips. We're all in agreement, except the Chief is going with the Bulldogs against the Tigers. Thanks very much, Jason.
A pleasure.
Al. It's been outstanding work from you guys. Thanks for joining us on Fox Sports Lab AFL. Make sure you subscribe below and follow us on socials, and we'll see you next week.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.